I'm happy to welcome you all to the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center Daily Check-In. We call it Something to Talk About. And today, as we do once a month, we partner with the Bainbridge Island Historical Museum to put together a presentation. And Katy Curtis from the museum has been very helpful in organizing these since the COVID pandemic started to sweep our world. So with no further ado, I will hand over the microphone to Katy, and she will introduce today's program, which is focused on the fact that today is Indigenous Peoples Day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Reed. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is quite an honor to be celebrating today with you, and I am excited about our program today. And before we get started, I do want to acknowledge the Indigenous people of Bainbridge Island. The Historical Museum stands on, and we gather today acknowledging that the land is within the Aboriginal territory of the Suquamish people. Expert fishermen, canoe builders, basket weavers, Suquamish people live in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's Central Salish Sea, as they have since time immemorial. Here, the Suquamish people live and protect the land for future generations as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855. So, happy Indigenous Peoples Day. And I have an incredible panel today that I want to introduce. We're just going to have a conversation about what this day means to the panelists. We have two wonderful students from Bainbridge High School and their grandfather. And I'm very excited. So without talking too much, I just want to get started. So how about if we get introductions from Sammy? Do you want to start? And you can introduce yourself and let us know your connection to Bainbridge Schools and to today.
Hi, I'm Sammy. I have pretty much lived here my entire life. We moved back here when I was 6. This is my grandfather, Sonny. He's pretty much lived here his entire life too, and my mom grew up on the island. I'm a senior in high school this year, and my family is part of the Tsawout First Nation up in British Columbia. So.
Very good. And Sonny, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Sonny Dulay. I was born in Seattle, but raised on Bainbridge Island, and we actually were the first. When we went to kindergarten, we were going in project houses down where the boat ramp is now, and I think my class was probably the first ones to go into Commodore, and you've seen all the changes in the high school and the gyms and all the sports and everything, and it's kind of nice to have other people realize or look into some of the lives of our indigenous people here, and it's just kind of nice to be an islander.
It is an honor to have you. And you have another granddaughter who's on the panel. Frankie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Frankie. I'm a freshman at BHS this year. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, welcome. So I wonder, Sammy, would you be willing to tell us, what does Indigenous Peoples Day mean to you?
Yeah, so growing up, this guy is my grandpa. I grew up around a lot of Indigenous stuff. We have drums hanging all around the house. There's all kinds of paintings and like hats and vests and all kinds of beadwork. And I grew up really connected to that side of my family. We all pretty much have lived on the island forever. And so I always grew up knowing that Christopher Columbus, for like the first most part of my life, I thought that he was the one that discovered America. And growing up and learning more and more about this country and learning more and more about where I come from and how my people have survived, I've come to realize that he didn't discover America, and that I'm glad that now most places recognize it as Indigenous Peoples Day.
Thank you. Thank you. And Sonny, so do you remember there being a Columbus Day that you celebrated, and how does it feel? What does this Indigenous Peoples Day mean to you?
Well, like everybody else, we thought that Columbus discovered us and all of that, and being First Nation in Canada, my family has always been deep into this native traditions and things like that. So all of my children and grandchildren have been adopted into the First Nations and have native names, and it's kind of nice because everything is kind of word of mouth, and in the old days nothing was ever written down and things like that. Have just passed on from generation to generation by stories, I guess it is. But it's kind of nice that we keep on going, because otherwise we're going to be kind of forgotten. So it's kind of nice to keep the kids in the loop.
So does it feel a little bit like that change from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day? That sounds like it felt like support, like that was good for you. That was a good thing.
Well, you think of Columbus, and the first thing I think about is having Thanksgiving with the natives and sharing the food and customs, and so it's kind of nice to include everybody.
Yeah, or tell the truth. So let's see, Frankie, I'd like to know, what does Indigenous Peoples Day mean to you?
Well, like Sammy and most of us here, I grew up thinking it was Columbus Day and that Columbus was this great hero that discovered us, but we were already here, living a great life. Kind of messed a lot of stuff up.
Yeah, kind of odd to be celebrating someone that didn't actually discover anything and that didn't honor what was here. So do you remember a time when you were like that switch from Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day? Do you remember feeling like, oh good, okay, we're going somewhere, or was that?
I don't really remember a specific like event where it switched in my mind that he's a bad guy, not a good guy. But it kind of became more real to me that some people still celebrate Columbus. A couple years ago, I was in band class and it was Indigenous Peoples Day, and somebody was like, oh yeah, happy Indigenous Peoples Day. And then my teacher said, no, in this classroom, it's Columbus Day. And that kind of just took me back.
Oh dear. Wow. Well, that must have actually been a really big deal. I mean, that's, yeah. And I wonder if that was, I mean, Bainbridge Island, has adopted this as Indigenous Peoples Day. And so I wonder if that was before or after, because I don't know. Do you think that a teacher would say that to you today?
I don't think they would, because they would probably get in a lot of trouble for it, to be honest.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, maybe later you'll want to share if you want to, because I'm certain that that must have hurt a lot. So I'm sure that, but if you wanted to share, it would be good for people to know what.
Or Frankie, if you want to share that one specific story that Katie, you and I talked about it. I told you about the one story that happened to Frankie last year.
Yeah, yeah. But it's it's totally up to you, Frankie. I want you to feel like you don't know all these people, so comfortable to share. But the reason why we want to hear your voice is because it actually happened to you. It's not like reading about something.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share it whenever.
Okay. Well, go ahead and how did it start? What's the beginning of the story?
So for my language arts class last year, it was 8th grade language arts. We were reading a book called, can't really remember the name.
That's okay.
It was about a Native American reservation and a boy that lived on it. He was less fortunate, and a lot of the story centered around the idea of alcoholism and the Native community, about how some Native people are genetically predisposed to addiction. So we
Like
each
all of
had
us.
a topic to what surprised us, what we learned. We had to research Native American people. So I chose something pretty simple, like the languages, but other people are choosing, yeah, thank you, Sammy. It was the absolutely true diary of a part-time Indian. Some people chose Native Americans hundreds of years ago versus now. And that was really shocking to me because they're just generalizing an entire group of people who lead completely different lives. So some of it was about how before Native, this is quoting, before they ate salmon and berries and all these healthy things, but now we eat fast food and alcohol and that's all we eat, which is
Oh my.
definitely not true. And my teacher was kind of enforcing this stereotype that all natives are overweight and unhealthy and alcoholics, which was really, really offensive to me personally.
Stereotypes are so harmful. And then when they're talking about people it's really hard. So were you able to express yourself in this case?
Yes, I was. I was very fortunate because I went home that day and I was still pretty upset about it. And I told Sammy, and she said, I can contact Christina for you and we can talk this through with your teacher because this isn't right. This shouldn't happen at all. And we'll make sure it won't happen again. So I was really grateful for that. Thank you, Sammy and Christina.
Well, that's a big sister we all want.
Well, and I remember that Frankie came home and told me that story. And it's also difficult because there are so many different Native groups and they're all so very different. So this story takes place in the southern part of the Southwest. And those are very, very different natives than up here in the Northwest or the Plains Indians or any of these other groups. They're all very different. And I think we teach about only a few different groups. And when people think of a Native American, they think of one specific type, but we're all so different that it's really harmful when people just think of this one person or this one specific thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Part about it all is that everybody seems like they visualize everybody or think of everybody as one big group, and it's sad because it takes individuals to make that group, and each individual is certainly different than the next person next to you, and it's just too bad you have to look at kind of the downside of everything. But you see that in different parts of the country, no matter what indigenous or natives or locals. There's that things everywhere, and it's just too bad that people don't realize that it's been a rough road for everybody.
Yeah. And completely different types of situations and different, and rough road for everybody we're more connected in the traumas that we experience, than lumped together as all the same. And it's really surprising to me that those stereotypes would be under, they would be so present in curriculum today, and I know that there's been, and we have a couple of teachers and stuff on the line that might want to comment on how that's changing. So I was wondering why do you think celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day is important to our community, to Bainbridge Island? I don't know if you've been to, I just want to shout out to Katy Curtis. She really did do a couple of big celebrations, like 4 big celebrations. And I was wondering, were any of you at any of those celebrations? And do you think that those were important for Bainbridge? And why?
I'm sure that I was at least one of those, probably all of them, if I had to guess. I think it's important for people to understand that Native Americans aren't like this mystical being. Like, we're still here, and even though, like, I don't look like I'm Native American to most people, so when people say something not thinking about the fact that there are Native American people that still exist and that may be sitting right next to them. And even though I don't look it, I'm still very connected to that side of me. And I just think that it's really important that we celebrate those differences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Bainbridge Island can look very much, quote unquote, the same, right? And so it's really exciting to be able to see that there are so many overlapping groups, and we all belong to so many, different cultures. And to look at somebody and assume what culture they might belong to, it's just like, forget about it. Don't do that anymore, because you never know, right? And so it's great to be able to celebrate the differences, and it's great to be able to celebrate the people that have been here since the beginning of time, and connections that are from here all the way back, all over to different Indigenous places, and that's a really fun thing to think about. And so, Sonny, I'm just thinking about, for you, I'm going to make the assumption that there hasn't been Indigenous People Day celebration. I know that there was a powwow at one point that Gina mentioned. But what kind of meaning does celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day on Bainbridge mean for you?
Well, I think it, first of all, when we have a party or whatever you want, a gathering at the Filipino Hall up there, that we always celebrate and thank our veterans for the jobs they've done, and I think it's a big opportunity for people. And I don't know whether other people are afraid to go to those things, but if you do go there, you find out that most people cook in the different items that are put on the table for the potluck, and it's always kind of like a family gathering, whether it's somebody's birthday or just Christmas or anything. It's everybody contributes, and it's not always put on to one person or two people, and it's kind of nice because at my tender age, I don't hardly know any of these young people, so it's an opportunity to see who belongs to who, because it's really an opportunity that's going to be long gone pretty soon. But
and if they show up, they belong to you too, right?
everybody's related here, so you got to be careful what you say. So
yeah. Well, that's a wonderful invitation. I hear that invitation that you've made to all of us, that, don't be afraid to join those wonderful celebrations that are at the Filipino American Hall. That
everybody's welcome. It's it's a nice experience, and sometimes we have the dancers from Seattle come over there, and they do the stick dance and all those native dances, and it's kind of nice. They got the drummers from Suquamish that are always involved at different gatherings, whether it be a memorial or some celebration, but we always work pretty close with Suquamish and their people over there.
Yeah, thank you. So I wonder, in the schools then, Frankie, are you a member of the Diversity Club or Indigenous Club or Native American Club, I guess it's called?
Not really. I hear a lot about it from Sammy, but I just really haven't gotten an opportunity to be a part of it yet. But yeah.
I mean, we haven't really had a lot of like meetings or anything because we're not in school. Usually we would meet during lunch, but Frankie hasn't been at the high school for when we've done that. So yeah, we just haven't gathered in a while, but I consider Frankie to be a part of both.
There you go. That's how to invite people. That's great. And so have you been, let's see, there's a special graduation, right, that the Native Club is a part of for the graduates that are in Native American at Bainbridge. Have you been to any of those?
I have not. It's also just been kind of a weird year. So, yeah, I haven't been to one of those, but.
Well, we have Christina on the line. So after a bit, I might be checking in with you, Christina, to tell people about that wonderful celebration, because it's pretty special. When I've had the privilege of going, it's remarkable to hear some of the speakers. So let's see. I just wanted to see if Sammy, I asked Frankie about her story. Do you have a story that you want to tell, or do you want to tell about having your sister come to you like that? And how did you know that you could go to Christina when something like that happens?
Well, so when we were still in in-person school, Christina was like pretty much always in her office. And me and my friends, we would just go and hang out with her and go eat in her office at lunch. And we were always in really close contact. And I know that she's always a person that I can go to at the school. And as soon as Frankie told me what had happened, the sad part was I wasn't honestly like super shocked by it, but I knew immediately. I was like, Christina needs to know this as the Native Education Coordinator. Like, she needs to realize that there are teachers that are reinforcing these negative stereotypes about people that are sitting in the room and that aren't even true most of the time. They're true barely ever. And it was just really harmful to Frankie. I remember Frankie was really upset. And yeah, so I immediately emailed Christina, and we met the next day at lunch and talked through it. And then Christina went to Frankie's school and talked with Frankie and the teacher. But
Yay, Christina. And really, really great, because we know that what happened, you know, to Frankie, sometimes people they don't bring it up, right? They blow it off and they won't tell their big sister. And then some people don't have big sisters to go to. And so I'm wondering how, like, were you told what the teacher, like, how did it resolve? How did the teacher understand, and you feel confident in that?
So the teacher came to me like the next day, I think during class. She like pulled me out of the classroom. Everybody was like, "Oh no, what did you do? You're in trouble." I'm like, "No, it's not about that." And she was like, "I'm so sorry you felt this way. I didn't realize I was like presenting it that way, but it's just like statistics." So I feel like she didn't totally get it, but
it opened her mind to it.
yeah.
So think about it twice next time, hopefully.
Well, a lot of people, you know, get all of these notions and thinking about things like that from books or whatever, through knowledge that way. Otherwise, you know, they're not really involved with the people that are really involved in the society or whatever. And you only get one side out of the written word, so it's kind of hard sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's great when people ask about people's true experiences, you know, and then when you can talk about that. And so for the future, or for going forward, what kinds of hopes do you have for how to experience Indigenous Peoples Day on Bainbridge? Or what kinds of experiences might you still want to share about previous celebrations and ways to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day? So do you have any kinds of hopes for it, or visions that you want to see us create all together as a community?
Well, I think to create more understanding and everything else would be great. And I think the only way to do that was probably get more people involved in the activities of the Indigenous people, or, you know, the regular people. That's what I want to say. You know, everything is right there as long as you want to take part. But
that's right.
Just say, oh well, but it does mean things to everybody.
Yeah, show up, right? That's kind of the story, right? When you show up. Okay, well, I was just wanting then to see if there were any questions from people in the audience, and to see if is there anybody who did go to some of the Indigenous Peoples Day celebrations, and maybe you're missing some of that today. I certainly am. I wish that I could be I remember one of them, there was a dance that I could, you know, learn. And then as a community, we did a dance. And so I was wondering, you know, for history's sake, you might want to share your experience at one of those Indigenous Peoples Day events. Does anybody have anything? Any of our participants?
You know, a lot of the gatherings and honorings and things they have certain traditions are just followed no matter what and how long ago they've started from whenever. And for example, if this cousin of ours is long gone, but he belonged to the I believe the kind of like a snake clan and stuff like that. And so when they had his memorial, they actually had the people that belonged to that clan, you know, actually dress up and crawl along the floor and everything else. But things like that are really not open to everybody, and it's not photographed or anything like that. But customs are customs, and they go by those, and you have to honor your folks and everybody else, and remember who's. Well, you just kind of got to pay attention to the way it used to be, and just be nice and obedient, and recognize your elders, because your elders are the ones that are doing the teaching and passing on of the activities.
Yes. Yeah, I had the privilege of learning something about the Suquamish traditions in that way, where we have a petroglyph on the island, and the Suquamish people have said that that petroglyph is for canoes when they're coming. You know, it's kind of like a welcome sign for the canoes that come on the water, and it's a big rock with a petroglyph on it. And I remember being told that there was a ceremony that had to do with kind of a awakening of canoes, and how that's why it's important that before we visit the petroglyph, the Halits, that we check with the tribe, because sometimes there are ceremonies like that that are internal to the tribe, and that the tribal members do as they've been doing for millennia, you know. So it's good to learn about that respect too. Is when you're invited, you know, do show up, and yet don't assume that you're invited to everything, right? Is that kind of what you're saying about that?
Yeah, and you know, these gatherings like memorials or holidays or whatever for recognition of certain people or things that, like when we had the naming of our children, we had planned it for well over a year, because everybody that attends, it's be just like a little potluck, but everybody that attends is going to receive a gift of some kind, no matter what it is, whether it's a teacup or jam or things like that, or something somebody has made. But everybody there, man, woman, or child, just everybody in the group. And we had probably 70, 80 people there for some of the namings, because some of the activities collide with other activities. So that depends a lot on what you do, but just like a regular old get together, but they'll have to follow the old rules about making sure everybody gets involved and everything else. And when I first got my name, which is Huadimet, which means a teacher or somebody you're supposed to look up to. And I remember this elder came up and he says, "What's your name?" And I said, "My name is Sonny Dulay." And he asked me, "What's your name?" He asked me several times, and then I finally remembered to say my native name. So it's kind of nice. Not many people have them anymore, and it's quite special.
It sounds, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when Frankie and I got named, it was a really big deal. We had in the room that my grandfather and I are sitting right now, it was just full of stuff that my grandma had been collecting. And we had to pack it all in a car, and we had to take it up in trips over like the year that we were planning and getting ready, because there was so much stuff that we had to have to be able to give gifts to people. Yeah, it was a huge deal, and it was a really great time.
Wow, it's amazing to have those kinds of.
And then, you know, when you actually have one of those things, you have, they go around and for all the males, the family has quarters. And so before you start all of this, you go around and you pick certain males, or every male, doesn't matter, and give them 50 cents. So the reason for all of this is that at any one time you can go back to that person or individual and ask them what happened here there, because they're actually witnesses on the occasion that was happening. So it's another thing where it's not really written, but you can be an active part of it all. And seems like I don't know if you want to say the older you are, maybe you're an elder or something like that, you get some, you know, pretty nice things if that's what you're looking for. But
Wow. Yeah. And Frankie is saying that, you know, even the babies get quarters. So that would mean that the brothers or sisters or parents with those babies got as well. And, you know, you'd be able to track the stories of those ceremonies and those celebrations.
Yeah, and I got Aunt Rena's name. I got my great aunt's name, Tsawout, and because it was just the name that was passed on to me, and I don't know.
And permission has got to be gathered from other elders and everything else, and you kind of keep it in the big family more or less. But you get permission for all of these things. You don't just go ahead and do it.
Frankie, do you want to share your name?
My name is Tsawout. I got it from my Aunt Bernie, I believe, because she didn't have any children to pass it on to. Her kids wanted it, I guess. I can put it in the chat because it's spelled weird.
Well, thank you. That's an honor to be able to share that. I wonder if, because it is, you know, Indigenous Peoples Day, is there anyone, you know, on the call that wants to share? Maybe there are other people who have connections. Are you interested in hearing from them, Sammy? Just some of the other people that might have connections to names or to tribes or to nations?
Yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to share, feel free.
I can introduce myself. I'm Karina Klinkenberg, and I'm descended from the Aleut tribe up in Alaska. My grandpa was born there, and his family moved to Seattle when he was like 4 or 5. So we unfortunately have lost a lot of the connections to that tribe up there due to him moving here so young and not knowing much about it. But we, over the course of my life, are continually discovering new things about our family. Like I was doing a school project in I think like 4th grade about the Alaskan flag, and discovered that it was actually my grandpa's cousin who designed it. So that was like, that was fun to find out. So yeah, there's still a lot more like discovering that needs to be done. And so we have like some old family records that need going through. But yeah, it's fun discovering those things about my family connections, even if they're very far away.
Aliens, they come from way up north around
Chicknick.
the chain up there in Alaska, don't they?
Yeah. So my grandpa is from the island of Chicknick,
Yeah, Chicknick, yeah.
way out on the tail.
So, thank you. Do you, as a Bainbridge Islander who just graduated last year, do you think that Indigenous Peoples Day is, what do you think? Do you think it means something on the island that we celebrate it? Why is it important to you?
I personally think the island does a really great job as you get older of giving the true like history of like Native Americans in our country. I, like Sammy, like originally when I was younger, like only knew the story of Columbus and like, oh, they came over on the Mayflower after that and everything was hunky-dory and they were friends. And then you get a little older and the real story starts coming out. But I think everything really became clear to me during Amstead. I don't know, did you take American Studies?
I didn't. I took U.S. history.
Okay.
Elected last year.
Yeah, that's kind of a bummer. That was one of my favorite classes. It's really hard, but like there's a whole unit on the history of all the policies surrounding the Native American tribes and the different treaties that have been put in place over the years. And it becomes very apparent that the United States government has continually pulled like sneaky tricks on the tribes in order to force them into smaller and smaller spaces and take away their rights. And there have been like different eras of treaties, and just it was shocking to me that it took until my junior year of high school for all of this to come out. I feel like because you learn about different injustices when you're much younger, but this one only got taught at the very end of high school. And I think by having an Indigenous Peoples Day, maybe it will become more of a common practice to start teaching people younger. Because I remember like in elementary school, we still had Columbus Day and we would get like the day off and everyone was just like, woo, like we get the day off. And that's like, that was like the extent of our thought. So I hope that Indigenous Peoples Day provides an opportunity for schools to start like diving into this topic sooner so that people don't think that everything's totally fine for the good beginning part of their lives.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, you know, you may not know, but in the old, well, in my grandfather's time, that and time before that, that potlatches were actually illegal. The gathering and having a get together because they didn't want everybody getting together and might be thinking about doing some bad things and stuff. But yeah, they don't do that. And then I don't know. It's just so many old time things that my mother, she went to boarding school, which a lot of the Indipino people, their mothers have gone there into Canada, and they went to these boarding schools, and they were kind of like I don't know, kind of like juvenile detention or something like that, you know. Where my mom went to school is on Cooper Island, I believe, and they raised chickens and eggs and cows and milk and things like that, and so they ate pretty sparingly. They didn't get to eat all of this stuff because they had people come over from the mainland, and the school, or the mostly Catholics, I assume, they used to sell the produce and different things to these people, different people, and the occupants of the school and things didn't get any of these benefits.
Mm,
I actually researched a lot of the Cooper Island Industrial School or something they called it.
right.
They did a lot of like nutritional experiments, I guess, on
Oh, dear.
the children that went to that school. And that was completely not unusual for any of these residential schools.
Mm,
Yeah, to just treat the children like they're not human beings,
mm.
trying to beat them into submission.
Wow, it's really amazing. Keep hearing these stories, you know, like the boarding school story. It was completely new to me, and then I started learning more of it when the Historical Museum did the Honor Thy Mother exhibit, you know, and so, yeah, stripping people of all kinds of things, kind of like delinquents.
Frankie just reminded me of our great grandmother was left-handed, and they actually used to beat her because she was left-handed and she wouldn't use her right hand because it wasn't natural for her. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you ever got a chance, you know, they've got a town in Vancouver Island that's called Tremanis.
Mm-hmm.
The whole town is nothing but murals on the walls and the buildings and things like that. And there is one memorial there that's probably I don't know, 60, 70 feet high and kind of in an oval shape, and it's kind of the center of all this paintings and so forth and so on. But they have depicted 2 Native American and 1 lady, and one of the gentlemen is our great-great-grandfather, and he was in the old days. He used to had a uniform and stuff, and he would be like a inland boatman pilot nowadays. He went on these on the sailing ships and stuff like that, and helped them navigate the inland waters. So, you know, things like that we don't
Celebrate.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's celebrate. I mean, I remember a friend of mine from the Suquamish tribe. She showed me a history book, and then it went through time, and then it said, you know, and then the mid 1900s, then came the environmentalists. And she said, who were the first environmentalists? Right? I mean, so it's really important that we do understand true history and understand all of the, you know, like in the acknowledgement of the Suquamish people, experts, you know, the expert fishermen, expert navigators, expert, you know, basket weavers. There's so much else to talk about. Even if that woman says that they're statistically blah, 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 why choose statistics that give that kind of light? Why not give, you know, stories of the contributions and strengths that we all have, you know, that were here before the invasion, and teach about these horrific acts that people have done, so that the healing, you know, can be started, and so that the truth of history gets told. So as the Historical Museum, it is really truly an honor that we've been able to listen to your voices today.
Frankie has a picture, I
Thank
think,
you.
that she'd like to show, if that's possible.
Excuse me?
Frankie has a picture that she would
Oh,
like to
Frankie
show,
does.
if that's
Okay,
possible.
Frankie.
Go ahead, Frank.
She's not with us.
There we go.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Oh, wow.
The one on the far left is the great-great-grandfather.
Oh.
And the
How-
lady on the right, she's from her name, her family name is a Wise, and they're from the Duncan and Nanaimo area. And but anyway, this is a great big memorial thing, and it's really interesting.
Wow. Wow.
Thanks, Frankie.
Yeah, thanks, Frankie. That's fantastic. It is a day to celebrate him and all of those on that memorial, for sure. Yeah. Well, so it's time to kind of wrap up, unfortunately. And this has been a very, very, very thankful conversation to have. And we've been having some questions in the chat about some other ways that we can honor today and ways. And so I think it is a day that's a day off that we can all, those of us who want to learn the truth, and those of everybody who wants to learn more. There are a bunch of programs, and the thing about the pandemic is that there are programs all over the country happening. And so Reed's sharing one of the links, and I hope maybe I'll see some of the people that signed in here to at some of those other celebrations. And it's just an incredible, it's an incredible uplifting thing to think of, like you said, Sonny, that even though there's so much farther to go, to have a switch from Columbus to Indigenous, and to at least, like Karena was saying, open up that this is what we need to be celebrating. And I also just want to add that it's also Filipino American Month. And so I know that that's part of your heritage as well. So happy Filipino American Month and Indipino and Indigenous Peoples Day.
I would just like to say that I really, really enjoyed that Honor Thy Mother thing, and I think it opened up a lot of history about where our mothers came from and what they had to go through to get here. And people don't understand, they came here for strawberries, and they went to Eastern Washington, you know, and hops and apples and everything else. And so it was really interesting, and I appreciate all the work you guys did on that.
Well, I so appreciate how you and Judy, your wife, and how your family contributed to that. And I'll just put a pitch in that we are open from Friday, Saturday, Sunday from 10 to 4, and we still are honored to have the barrettes that your mother did in the bead work there, and just welcome everybody who's here to come on in on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday and see part of the art and beautiful handwork from Sonny and Frankie and Sammy's family. So
From our family, we say Haichka. That means thank you. That's where you see that people usually raise their hands up and they say Haichka. That's thank you.